Hey there, Max here, and in this episode we're taking a look at Cave Story, an indie platformer made over the span of 5 years entirely by a single person, Daisuke Amaya, also known as Pixel. This game is designed to look, sound, and feel like a classic game from the 8-bit era like you might expect to play on the NES, and takes inspiration from games like Metroid and Blaster Master. I was originally only going to cover one level from this game, but as I was recording I felt a little bit inspired, so this episode of Great Levels in Gaming is a twofer. To start off, let's take a look at the opening of the game, the accurately titled First Cave. To any aspiring game designers out there, much like the intro stage of Mega Man X, this is a really great example of how to teach the player how to play your game without needing to explicitly tell them anything. You start out on a floating platform in the center of a room, so immediately you're going to need to learn how to cross a gap, and by trying out a button or two, boom, there you go, you've learned how to jump. Although the door to the exit is above you on screen, your eye is drawn to the save and heal points because they're bright red and spinning or flashing, and again with a couple button presses you learn how to use the objects in the environment, which applies to the door up at the top of the room. Now you can only go left since the way right is blocked, and again we see the use of color to draw your eye to the spikes. The visual contrast, again through the use of the color red, means you really can't miss them, and if your gamer instincts didn't already tell you to avoid the bloody spikes, well, you'll learn quick. But if you get spiked, it also teaches you that you don't need to worry about lives, so at least there's that. This area is also your first introduction to enemies with the flying bats and hopping critters, and because you're unarmed, it subtly ingrains the idea that sticking around a fight isn't always necessary. In Cave Story, sometimes you'll run into enemies that are just easier to avoid than to fight, and you learn this right away. This area also happens to contain the first life capsule in the game, which adds a permanent increase to your health. Again, it's almost impossible to miss between its bright red color and its constant flashing, and it teaches you that you'll want to explore and keep a constant eye out for upgrades so you can keep getting stronger. Moving forward, you'll notice that even if you're able to make the jumps without landing in the water, there's a section where you're guaranteed to get submerged, making sure you have ample opportunity to learn that water slows your movement and to see the air counter that tells you how long you can be underwater. If, like me, you didn't quite get the jumps perfect on your first try, this is also where you learn that water hinders your ability to jump. Once inside the gunsmith's home, you reunite with your age-old video game friend, the treasure chest, inside which you find your first weapon, the Polar Star. You'll wonder where its name comes from for exactly as long as it takes you to notice the shape of the muzzle flash. Cute, right? Defeating the previously invincible enemies teaches you that enemies drop experience that you use to level up your weapons, and a certain sneaky event I won't spoil almost guarantees that you won't make it out of the cave unscathed your first time, and this teaches you that you lose your accrued experience when you take damage. Among all this, you see clips of other characters to draw you forward and get invested in finding out what's going on in the story. All of this occurs in the first not even 5 minutes of the game, and it teaches you all the basics of Cave Story without any explicit tutorial. This is exactly what an intro level should do, teach you everything you need to know about the game without distracting you from it. Now, as you might expect from a game called Cave Story, most of the game takes place in caves, but there's actually a good bit of variety to the environments. A little more than halfway through, though, you finally see the sky for the first time, following the moment when you choose either to make a cowardly escape from the island or stand and fight against the Doctor. You'll likely make this choice pretty quickly. I mean, who voluntarily chooses to end a great game early? However, the most amazing thing about this level, to me at least, is how it seems entirely designed to lend weight to your choice after the fact. The gameplay here reflects your choice not to run away, throwing you into one of the longest and most challenging platforming sections thus far in the game. This not only forces you to get more comfortable with the recently acquired jetpack, but also serves as a test of worth to prove that you're ready to forge ahead in your quest to defeat the Doctor. Just like we saw in Skyrim, this section shows you rising to the challenge before you, not just figuratively, but also literally. Let's consider the most immediately noticeable thing about this area, the sky. Because it's so different from the cave walls that you're used to seeing in the background at this point, you can't help but pay attention to it, which suggests that it holds some significance for this part of the story. On one hand, you can see it as something of a sad reminder that you could be safely escaping the island. On the other, it also seems to me to represent a sense of clarity. Having acknowledged and accepted the doubts and fears that would make you want to just run away, there's some peace in knowing that you've overcome them for the sake of something bigger than yourself. This brings me to the music, which is really what inspired me to make this video in the first place. The song featured in this section, titled Moon Song, perfectly fits the gameplay, story, and setting, especially when we consider the themes we touched on a moment ago. First, and in my opinion most important, is how the song's key fits into the level. It's in a minor key, C minor to be specific, but at the same time it's kind of positive, both soothing and encouraging. It achieves this in the original version through the use of a steady drum beat that pulls you forward, and in the new version through sounding calm and peaceful, almost like a lullaby. The combination of these comforting and reassuring melodies along with a slightly sad tone seemed to me to reinforce the connection between the sky and the level's preceding choice that I mentioned before. On the whole, the song carries you forward and gets you excited to keep playing and progressing, but at the same time, I feel like it suggests a little bit of sadness over the fact that you've chosen against your own safety. If you were presented in real life with the choice between guaranteeing your own safety and risking yourself to protect strangers like you are in the game, it would be an understandably difficult decision, and even if you chose the latter, you might feel a bit of sadness over voluntarily endangering yourself. In this way, the song adds a bit of realistic emotion to the level that you probably won't otherwise get if, like me, you just breeze through the choice before wanting to keep playing the game and finish what you started. It's just awesome to me that the music and setting can work together to suggest a level of emotional depth that you don't get at all just through the gameplay. Speaking more broadly, Moonsong doesn't just reinforce this level's themes with regard to the story, but actually connects to every single aspect of its design. Both the new and original versions of the song feature a high echoing theme in the background that evokes the wide open backdrop of the night sky behind you, again underscoring just how important the setting is to the events on screen, and it's so important that the new version of the piece opens on this echoing theme on its own. Additionally, you'll recall that I compared the new version to a lullaby, which again highlights the starry night sky in the background, drawing your attention to how much this setting stands out compared to the rest of the game. The main melody is defined early on by constant rising and falling, which parallels the vertical gameplay here as you platform up the wall, connecting the music directly to the gameplay. Taking this a step further, it underpins the gameplay's support of the events in the story by highlighting how the climb up the wall depicts a literal rise to the challenge ahead. By connecting to every element of the level's design, Moonsong acts as its glue, so to speak, and this seamlessness ensures that this level is memorable, immersive, and meaningful. From a broad perspective, these two levels have very different purposes. First Cave is intended entirely to introduce you to the game and teach you the ropes while getting you interested in the game's world, while The Outer Wall, to me, is about reaching your heroic potential and stepping up to the plate to accept the challenge ahead of you. Both levels, however, use the environment to subtly communicate the information that you need, and Outside Wall amplifies this through judicious use of the setting and the soundtrack to enrich the story and its themes. Having originally released in 2004, Cave Story is a very important game to keep in mind when looking at a lot of today's indie games, and these levels offer a great example to any aspiring game designers of what a single person can achieve using smart, careful design. Thank you for watching. As always, this was a lot of fun to make, and I hope that you've enjoyed it too. I'd love to get your thoughts and opinions in the comments, and I hope that you'll join me next time when we take a look at another great level in gaming.